Ideas. So I come to conference and I talk to my friends, I talk to folks that I meet the first time. And it's like, oh, what do you do? What's your practice? Are you with a company or do you private practice? You get ideas for business ideas, future endeavors. You read research posters, poster presentations. You're like, oh, I never thought to connect those things. Like, this is a future research topic. The ideas, that's the other thing for me.
Up next on Hands On, Hands Off, we talk to Jennifer and Shankar, two unlikely friends who met a few years back at the AAOMPT conference, and now they've turned into ambassadors for people who were just like them. Sort of confused and on the outside of why people like them should come to a conference like this. Their story is nice. It's good to hear when people find connection at a conference. But what you really walk away from this conversation is 6 benefits, 6 reasons that I'm talking to you, should consider coming to this conference or really any conference. I gave them a little homework assignment. Once I found out about their story, I said, of course I want to tell your story, but what I really want you to do is go off and think about each 3 reasons why someone else should try out the AAOMPT conference. And the funny thing is, their answers pretty much lined up, but in different and unique ways. Take a listen to this conversation between 2 unlikely friends that are now bonded by the AAOMPT conference, here on Hands On, Hands Off. All right, who are we here with? Introduce yourself from radio left to right.
My name is Jennifer Boudreau.
Okay.
I'm a physical therapist out in Houston, Texas. I'm a fellow of AAOMPT as well, graduated from Optum. I am in an orthopedic sports medicine clinic. I treat pretty much everything and also vestibular concussion.
Cool. And sitting next to you?
My name is Shankar Krishnan. I'm a physical therapist from Detroit, Michigan. I became a fellow in 2008, and I'm in private practice treating people with chronic pain primarily.
Awesome. So how do you guys know each other? Like, what's the story? I feel like we need, this is like our conference story, like connection.
So in 2022, had to think about it. I graduated from my fellowship, met the requirements, and I said, this is the year. I had a mentor at the time, Phil Tigel. He passed away earlier this year. And one of the things about Phil that was mentioned on this podcast was that he was such a light and a spirit for PT. And he was like, oh, you're finishing your fellowship? You have to come to AAOMPT. And I was like, all right, I'll come to AAOMPT. So I had a connection there. Was going to go to the fellowship recognition ceremony. And then I noticed that we had this experience program. So I signed up. It's for first-timers. And through the experience program, I met Shankar and a few other individuals. And we just kind of hit it off. And we attended everything together. I think we did the full conference that year, like you attend everything.
Yeah.
And then since then, we've stayed connected, and we just show up year after year. And we're now volunteers for the program for experience. So we help Allison, and this is our second year volunteering.
Usher in other people who've gone through the first time.
Correct.
What'd she leave out of the story? What'd she miss? Did you lock eyes over like croissants at the first timers breakfast? Or
Actually, the second year we did.
Yeah, that was over croissant. And the other part of the story with the croissant was in Starbucks they have this almond croissant, and I can never eat a full one. But I can have half too. So every time I eat an almond croissant, it's like, okay, I need to save half for Jennifer.
2 halves of the same almond croissant. All right, so you're people who have come to this sort of with what type of knowledge? Phil sort of told you should come. Why did you come then first?
So, my story is slightly different. I became a fellow in 2008.
Okay.
And that was right in the phase of life where I had little kids, I had 3 jobs, just didn't really have any time. In fact, I didn't even come for my ceremony for my fellowship, unfortunately. Now I see what I missed. And then life got better, kids grew up, I had more time, so I randomly thought, okay, I'm going to go. It was in San Diego, and I've never been to San Diego. I'm like, okay, this is the year I'll go to San Diego. And I've been to conferences for the past 5-7 years. I've been to private practice and CSM once, but never felt like, okay, I don't want to go back there. I did PPS twice. But the first time I came to AAOMPT, I think it was the X program. It's like, oh, first-timers. I don't look like a first-timer, but I was a first-timer. And I became part of the program, and it was such a good, like you said, ushering in to the whole program. And we met Jennifer and a couple other people, and we've stayed connected. And that becomes another reason for us to come back every year. It's like, okay, yeah, I need to meet my conference buddies.
Right.
Yeah.
So the obvious thing, looking from the outside, the purpose of this episode is sort of tell your story. But then I want you to sort of explain the benefits, the things that you can't see, the things that are not on a conference website. And we're not even just talking about the AAOMPT conference. Obviously, we're on the AAOMPT podcast. We want you to come to the AAOMPT conference. But these are things that you might not see. You can see the features on a website, but maybe not the benefits. Those are often hidden. But I love the fact that there's a first-timers program and that you not only went through it, but now you usher other people through it. Because these things can sort of be intimidating, right? There is a club, right? When someone shows up this year and they see how tight you guys are, they don't maybe have their other half to their croissant yet, and they're wondering how do I break into this? And that's simple but not easy. So your task less than 10 minutes ago that I sort of threw at you here, the morning of day 2 of the AAOMPT conference was, okay, if we're going to tell this story, which is a good one, now I want you to yes and, which is the only rule of improv, which is you are each supposed to come up with 3 benefits, and then you're going to alternate as you say those benefits of why someone listening who maybe got their fellowship years ago but never came, or maybe someone, I call it on the end of the diving board, is like, I thought about it, that's one that's on my radar. This is either going to push them off the diving board into the pool, or maybe they're just, that's not for me. So we're going to alternate and go back and forth. Jennifer, we're going to start with you. First reason you came up with out of your 3 of why someone should jump into the deep end and come to a conference like this.
Networking 100%.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many opportunities have come up over the 3 years. Just yesterday alone, I was approached on 4 separate occasions for 4 different things. Some of them I need to marinate on, but I think I've joined a committee. I was approached about a post-professional doctorate program. What else? I was approached for a reviewer position. So the networking is just effortless here. Once you get to conference, you start to meet people. The experience program is one great way, but I will say this organization as a whole is very inclusive. Megan even said in her speech during the fellow recognition ceremony that this is a family. And a lot of our seasoned clinicians here are really great about kind of networking, getting you plugged in. That's my favorite things about the conference. It's like, okay, if I'm looking for anything new, there are opportunities galore, and networking is the way to do it.
Yeah, talked about this with Chad Cook on a previous episode, but I'm going to push back, right, to make you answer me again, which is, well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. What's different? That's wider. I could talk to anybody I want. What's different about this connection versus that?
Why is communicating in person different than communicating via text? Contact, tone.
70% of communication is nonverbal.
Right. It's
not good for a podcaster, but keep going.
It's that element, though. It's the face-to-face.
Yeah.
There's no other way to explain it. I think the context, the vibe, you come and you just feel a part of it. You get to ask a lot of follow-up questions. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more of this social interaction.
Yeah. I'll say that this conference, because I go to a lot of them, is sort of designed for those things. Like right now, we're between sessions. There's 15 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but a lot of other conference will be 5 minutes. There's no time for the elbow rubbing. There's no time for what people are doing behind us. If you're watching the video, if you can hear in the background, they're talking to other humans in person, right? So you can't really do that online. That's not what a DM is. All right. So your first reason was the connections, I'm going to say people, not network.
Okay. Yeah.
People. Sounds better. Sounds more human. Shankar, what's your number 1 reason?
So my number 1 reason, and I've been a PT for 27 years, so I've been there for a while, but even fresh graduates or anybody, we are very busy with our work. After a while, it tends to be a little bit mundane, even though on a daily basis there are challenges, and it's hard work. It's not easy work. It's physical and long hours sometimes. I think the conference is almost like a break. It's a gift that you give to yourself. And you go to this nice location like Orlando or San Diego, and it's also guilt-free. You're supposed to be there. You're supposed to be learning. You get all the features and the benefits, but then you meet like-minded peers, and it almost rejuvenates you. You feel like, oh yeah, I want to do that too, or I want to be in that committee too. And during your regular routine, you might not have time to think about those, but here you are immersed in this moment where everybody is doing a lot of things that you would love to do, and this is a push. And I have to say this: it's not just a one-time deal. Every year you come in, you find new to do, and that you thought you would have done previously or in the past year, but it's like, oh yeah, I had forgotten about to get into that.
So I'll say the same thing, but I could, Shankar, I could find those on YouTube, right? I could listen to a podcast, but why is this deeper? Why is what you're explaining deeper than just watching a video or listening to someone talk about it?
See, I always feel like if you watch a video, you listen to something, it's very one-sided. And it's like listening to a Zoom class. You can ask questions, but it's a one-sided thing. When we have a conversation like this, suddenly ideas come up. It's like, oh yeah, I need to ask you that. And it's a different, like the in-person conversation that Jennifer was talking about. It's just a different experience.
Yeah. So both of your first answers were people. I'll say yours is connection. Yours sounds a little bit like sharp. You ever hear the story about the two lumberjacks, sharpen the axe versus chop wood?
Right.
It sounds like chopping wood is what you do when you're not here, when you're working, when you're running your clinic,
Correct.
when you're treating patients.
Correct.
And if you pause and you sharpen that axe,
yes.
when you go back to doing that, chopping the wood, you're rejuvenated, you're more efficient, you get more done with maybe a little bit less effort.
That's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do. I'm the analogy guy.
Yeah.
All right, so similar. You can see why you guys are friends. Similar first answers. What about your second answer?
This kind of segues nicely because my second answer was I get inspired,
okay.
Which was actually, I think, our conference theme in 2022. I come to conference and I get inspired for Monday morning. There's new ideas. I get energized. I get motivated to go back to work. It's just refreshing to be amongst like-minded people doing the same thing that you're doing or things slightly differently.
Right.
That's the next big thing that stands out for me.
The only thing I'll challenge you or I'll say is I see some people here who are slightly not liked, and I actually come for that. So you see, like direction, I want improvement, but how did you get there?
You're stealing my third point.
All right, so I'll keep up. I wasn't cheating. I didn't know. So yours is inspiration.
The inspiration, the motivation. It's like I get pumped up when I come to this conference.
Yeah.
And because it's smaller and more intimate compared to some of the bigger conferences, this is just a little bit more concentrated to the OMPT environment.
Sure. So you get people who are in similar or the same settings when we disperse and we go back home. People don't do everything the same, and you look and you say, why did you overcome that way? Mm-hmm. That's why I always ask, what's your greatest failure, and then how did you overcome it? Because I don't know the failure if it's similar to mine. Great, let me get a cheat code. For me, the biggest cheat code has always been other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I borrow your ideas? So inspiration is your second. Shankar, what's your second reason?
I love origin stories and I love life stories. So through our training, we read about all these. We read a lot of research articles. We have to do it for school and everything. And these names keep popping up of legends who are greats in physical therapy. I mean, every third research article written by the same guy. And then suddenly you're here in a conference and you see that person in person. And he's not busy with speaking arrangements or something. He's just sitting there getting coffee right next to you. And it's like, oh, Dr. So-and-so, it's so nice to meet you. And then they're in a much more relaxed environment.
Yeah.
They want to talk. They're like, oh yeah, where are you from, and what do you do? And then you start talking, and then suddenly you want to know, how did they start? What did they do? What is their origin story? What are they doing now? And I mean, I feel Jennifer talked about inspiration. That is inspiration for me also. It's like I want to know where you started and how did you become a legend. So maybe, just maybe, if I find my own path, and maybe I would be 20 years from now, somebody will be standing next to me, getting coffee, asking me how I started.
Less than 20 years. All right, so your second was inspiration. Yours sounds like connection, if I were put,
correct.
Or accessibility to people you are, reading from or learning from the other 364 days.
Which we cannot get from a LinkedIn or a YouTube video or any one-sided.
So all these things are good, but they're different, right? CSM, which is huge, isn't better or worse.
Right.
It's just different. But understanding, so when you just say, hey, AAOMPT's conference, you just assume it's going to be like every other conference. But when you zoom in a little bit, like your story, like your origin story, you can see it's different. All right, no pressure, but your third reasons for why you think someone should come. What is the third benefit?
I feel like this is segued really nicely, and we didn't plan this.
Themes come up.
Ideas.
Okay.
So I come to conference, and I talk to my friends. I talk to folks that I meet the first time. And it's like, oh, what do you do? What's your practice? Are you with a company or do you private practice? You get ideas for business ideas, future endeavors. People are doing really interesting things with cash pay practices. You read research posters, poster presentations. You're like, oh, I never thought to connect those things.
Yeah.
Like, this is a future research topic. The ideas, that's the other thing for me.
Ideas in person, ideas in motion, ideas in reality. All right, what's your third?
I love the segue thing because it segues into my answer. So I'm in private practice, and I also like to constantly keep updating what I do in my practice and also the technology that I use. And I know every conference has exhibit halls and all that, but this is an AOMPT, it's OMPT specific.
Very specific.
So I love to go to the exhibit hall and see the latest. I mean, today there's a dry needling station where people are getting dry needled and demoed. And that's how I first came to know about dry needling about 7 years ago, and I got certified with one of the vendors who was here. And then you see a lot of stuff, and AI is coming. So we talk about
It's here.
Yeah,
It's already listening.
yeah, it's already here.
Say nice things.
We talk about electronic medical records and transcription. What is the biggest bane of our profession? It's documentation, right? Documentation, or the time spent during documentation.
Sure.
Nobody disagrees with how important documentation is, but why does it take so much time?
Right.
And then you have AI programs now coming up that'll sit in the room with you, and you don't even have to program it. It'll just listen to you and document it.
Yeah.
This is the place where you can test it out and see if that's what works for you.
Kick the tires, take it for a test spin. It looked good on the video, right? But now I can see it in person. I always people, the exhibit hall. It's like Antique Roadshow, man. It's like, here's this product. Show me how it works, and you can do that interaction. Yeah, you can do that. That's a really great first pass on a video or listening to somebody talk about it on a podcast. But being able to hold the technology, feel the technology, it's a little bit different. You can't get that at a conference.
Not to mention, this is very tactile profession at an OMPT conference.
Yep.
And so, that goes a long
I just saw
way.
a great video that Jeremy Lewis just shared with the person in time using the hammer and the chisel on someone's spine. It's like, well, it's pressure, right? So it should be, well, I'll let Jeremy explain that a little bit later. All right, so those are your 6, right? So if someone's listening, those are just 6. Those were your 3 and your 3. There are others. The last thing we do on the episodes is called a parting shot. So what's your idea, your mic drop moment, your soapbox statement? What would you want to leave with people as we wrap up this episode to make them think about? And I'll put your parting shot in the context of maybe not come to this conference, not yet, but you should go to a conference because you get these things. So what's the idea you want to leave with the audience?
I can speak for myself and my generation maybe, because my classmates had a similar feeling. This whole imposter syndrome. We get very caught up in this whole, I don't think I'm as good as
Where do I stand?
Where I stand, and there's this whole fake it till you make it thing, and it's go for it. Say yes, participate, get plugged in, and it's going to evolve from there. I think there's some fear about, I don't feel like I'm good enough to attend that, to go talk to like the famous PTs, so to speak. But it's like, no, go do it. It goes a long way. Yeah. So kind of take some of the fear out of it, take a risk.
Jump. Yeah, the net will appear, probably.
My reason, and again, it can transcend people like me who've been around for a while or fresh graduates. I mean, the idea that if you learn one thing maybe or 2 things that makes you better Monday morning, and it's not about, I need to be a better I'm already a physical therapist, I'm already licensed, my patients are great, so why do I need to spend $700,000 and go to a conference to learn something? What more can I learn? It's about something that you do differently Monday morning, and you actually feel good about it. And that's huge. Self-esteem, believe it, and self-confidence is huge, especially when you're starting out. And when you come to a place like this, it does give you something to go back with.
Perfect. Well, that's all we need. Thank you for telling your story. Thanks for jumping in and being first-timers the first time you did it. And I'm glad to see the croissant is still there.
Thank you. Yep.